Hello and welcome to the Irish NFL Show's preview of Week 16 of NFL action. My name is Shane Brennan. Tonight I'm joined by Brian O'Leary, Noel Dowling and Kieran O'Donovan as we take a spin through Sweet 16. We're already this far into the season. The playoffs are getting so close for a handful of teams who are still in playoff contention. And for those of us who aren't, the Tankathon is definitely on. I'd like to point everybody to the fact that Brian is wearing his New York Giants top, which is definitely a bit of a tank top tonight, or maybe not. Maybe they might find a new way to mess us up as we go along. For everyone who's listening to us, please give us a like or hit the subscribe button wherever you're listening to us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast. It definitely does help spread the word of what we're doing. And maybe it works as a nice little Christmas gift to us if you let your friends know about all the work we are doing. In terms of what we're talking about tonight, guys, the Christmas period has arrived, which means we have Saturday games for the next 3 weekends. So we have 2 games this coming Saturday. The 4 teams who are playing on Christmas Day are playing this Saturday, as well as 7 6 o'clock games on Sunday, 4 games in the 9 p.m. window, Sunday night football and Monday night football. It's an absolute festive feast of football. And on top of that, Thursday night football is on tonight between the Broncos and the Chargers. If you haven't listened to it, I got to interview Benjamin Albright, who is a prominent beat writer for the Broncos, previewing that game. It is in your feeds now. Our first segment tonight is brought to you by Rootpoint, demonstrating the value of global PR and comms to your business. And we go on to that Saturday 6 o'clock kickoff. Perfect time for sitting in and watching it in the weekend as the Houston Texans travel to play the Kansas City Chiefs. Interesting one in this because as we know after last week, Patrick Mahomes' situation was a week to week. We're not quite sure what was going on with his ankle. When it looked like that he wasn't going to be playing, the Texans looked like were put in as 2-point favorites on QuinnBet. And now that Mahomes looks like he will be playing, according to what Andy Reid was saying earlier, the Chiefs are now 3.5-point favorites. That X factor, Brian, has been really key to what the Chiefs have been able to do all season. They're one of 4 teams in the league that have not been able to score more than 30 points this year. The other 3 are in like the 2 and 3 win category. The Patriots and Giants are among them, I believe. It's amazing, though, that even though they haven't been able to always get huge score lines, they've always been managed to get wins over the line. And now that Patrick Mahomes looks like he will be starting for them, do you think they'll be able to get over the line against this Houston team?
I think it's, in terms of them not scoring the points, I think it's the evolution of this team over the course of the last 3 years and not overly reliant to a certain extent on the Mahomes magic. It's always great to see Mahomes play really well. We've seen him step up in big moments over the course of the last few years. But this team, let's be fair, over the course of the last 24 months, this team has been built defensively for a large part. We've seen Steve Spagnuolo scheme against all the best in the league and find ways to put these teams to the sword. And we've seen time and time again this season in these one-score games where if it's not the defensive side, the special teams, block field goals have found ways to get them over the line. I'm not surprised that Mahomes is going to play. It's been declared that he will play because if you look at the situation where they're at in this stage of the season, the Chiefs, I think everybody acknowledges if the Chiefs get home field advantage and the first seed, they're 2 games essentially from running it back and being in the Super Bowl again. And then we really will be talking about whether they can make it 3 in a row. And they need 2 wins. And you look at the schedule ahead of them, you touched on it there, Christmas Day, Steelers, the Broncos a mile high. Broncos may or may not be in the playoffs, in terms of it's confirmed by them, but it's still a huge game within the division. They need this one. They need to get it over the line. And it's probably working out well because the Texans have won the division. There's very little for them to play for. The seeding doesn't look like it's going to really matter to them over the course of the next few weeks, kind of similar to what Kieran said on Monday about the Packers in terms of where they land in the seeding spot. They're going to have a home game in the wild cards. This has all the makings of the Chiefs coming out and putting this team away. We've seen some sloppy performances of late. I think Mahomes is going to probably answer a few, I won't say critics, but a few question marks over the course of the last few weeks. I think he'll play very well this coming weekend and kind of put that kind of danger to bed very quickly where if he really is injured. I think the Chiefs come out on the right side of this. I think they will. I think they win this one well.
I have to agree with you on this one in terms of the way that Mahomes will come out and win. We saw the last couple of seasons when he has an ankle injury. You think, okay, that's going to hamper him down. It's going to stop him from running. It's going to stop him from extending plays. This is Patrick Mahomes. He's an ultimate competitor. I think that more than skill set is what really separates him from the Josh Allens and Joe Burrows and all the other quarterbacks who are even in the mid-tier. The fact that he is an ultimate competitor. And when he's given a reason to be knocked back, he'll bounce back even harder. And that's why I'm expecting a strong performance. And if he can't run, he's going to find a way to fine-tune his arm. He'll find a way to really make that offense home in a much stronger way. Be interesting to see how much DeMeco Ryans is going to try and blitz and put pressure on Patrick Mahomes, or how much they're going to try and defend how much space the wide receivers are going to get. One of the reasons I don't have much confidence in the Texans for either of the two Christmas period games, by the way, because they play against the Ravens on Christmas Day as well, is that when you look at just the way that their quarterback and their passing play is going, they spend too long before they pass the ball, considering that their offensive line is not good enough. Spagnuolo's defense is going to be all over that, and I'm not expecting much from CJ Stroud and co. And like you said, I don't know how hard they're going to be playing, because I don't really know how much better they're going to get than the 4 seed in the AFC race as it is, because of where teams are in the other 3 divisions, and they've already sealed their divisional berth, so they don't need to play particularly hard in a wildcard race either. So I think the Chiefs are going to win this one. Noel, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think the Texans are a team that have been very hard to count on this year. Now that they've got the division sewn up, I find it very hard that they're someone I could kind of bank on now. They have that little bit of a rest period, and I think the Chiefs with Mahomes in there are a better team. And while it might not be an explosive one, they're more than good enough to be the Texans team that I think are not going to give them too much of a challenge.
Kieran?
Yeah, I think the Texans would like to find a rhythm. They haven't found consistency, but if Mahomes plays, I think the Chiefs win. I think they need more.
Very good. We'll move on to the Saturday game, which will kicks off at 9:30 as the Pittsburgh Steelers travel to the Baltimore Ravens, one which is definitely piquing interest as a lot of people are watching the AFC North in-season Hard Knocks. Interesting, the last time these two teams faced off, it was a close game. A lot of these AFC North games seem like they are field goal types matchups. Looking at this, though, the Ravens are 6.5 point favorites, considering that's quite a big spread. And that was before the news broke that George Pickens will not be playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's been ruled out with a hamstring injury, certainly hampering what Russell Wilson and co will be able to do on offense. Noel, when you're looking at this matchup, you know, the Ravens and Steelers, they've both been knocked down a peg by the Eagles in the last couple of weeks. They're both really in a lockdown to try and see who's going to top this division and who's going to be the wild card berth, I suppose. This matchup means a hell of a lot to both of these teams, and you can expect that they're going to play hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you always get a tough game between these teams anyway. But as you mentioned, the division now is on the line. If the Steelers win this game, they take the division, and obviously they'd be delighted with that. But the Ravens, obviously great form. They got a really good offense. Lamar Jackson is having a phenomenal season. They need to get this win to stay within to challenge for that division title, and I think they probably will. I mean, TJ Watt playing is a big boost for the Steelers. George Pickens missing, obviously, that's going to be an issue for me on offense. I think the Steelers' offense is better this year. I think they do have some good pieces on it, but I just wonder if it's enough, with everything that's on the line, with the Ravens needing this win. I just think that the Ravens will be able to step up at home and take the win. Now, the big question for me is Lamar Jackson. We have this Steelers defense, which is obviously top class. And whatever it is, Mike Tomlin has a really good record going up against Lamar Jackson. No matter how good Jackson is playing, the Steelers always seem to play him tough. But I think this week that's going to change a little bit. He might not run riot, but he is in absolutely blistering form this season. For me, Josh Allen is MVP for this season, but I think Lamar Jackson could have a very good argument with 34 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, which is just phenomenal, and everything he does with his feet. So I think it's going to be a good game. I think it'll be a tight game. I think the point spread is a bit too much. I think the Steelers will probably cover that point spread, but I think there's so much in it for the Ravens now. I think they really need to get this win, because as I say, if the Steelers take it, then they take the division, and I just don't think that's going to happen. I think the Ravens will have enough. Lamar Jackson and that offense will have enough to go out there and win this game.
Kieran, it's an interesting one with Lamar Jackson and his performances against AFC North opponents. We saw the last time these two teams played, the Steelers won 18-16 by virtue of scoring 6 field goals because they managed to keep Lamar Jackson quiet enough to just be able to chip away the scoreboard bit by bit. And you see Lamar Jackson last year, when these two teams played in Pittsburgh, I think Jackson dropped a bit of a dud before flying to London. We've seen against the Browns he struggled, against the Bengals sometimes he struggles. I think in comparison to the great performances that he personally is able to put up against a lot of opponents in the league, the AFC North seems to know a little bit better how to deal with him. And I just wonder whether that Pittsburgh defense, with the extra couple of weeks to learn on his performances, might be able to find some way to edge this one.
Yeah, look, it's interesting. Lamar Jackson, look, everybody knows the season he's having. He's coming off a 5 touchdown, no interception, 154.6 passer rating game last week. But if you look at if you look at his history with the Steelers, as you mentioned, he's 1-4. The Steelers are the only team he's thrown more picks than touchdowns against. He's never had a passer rating of over 80.1 against the Steelers and Mike Tomlin. So there does seem to be that little hoodoo. And I know, we talk about the Lamar Jackson playoff jinx, but like he's got this little monkey on his back with the Steelers as well. And bear in mind, this is a team that they may come up against again in the playoffs. So this is one for Lamar Jackson that he'd like to get over that hump and just like to get that mental block out of the way. And look, I do think this is the weekend to do it, because we see Russell Wilson there at our last weekend, 128 yards, 1 touchdown versus the Eagles, and that's without George Pickens. And it's going to be the same story again this week. Where the Steelers' points are going to come from. We mentioned the last time, 6 field goals is good enough to win a game. It's not good enough to win consistently over a long period of time. So, are they going to be able to trust Boswell again to pull it out of the bag? I'm not quite so sure. Now, having said that, if the conspiracy theorists are to be believed, you never know. Roger Goodell might be in the ears of the referees, telling him to ease off and take the Chiefs jerseys off for a week, because the Netflix special on Christmas Day could be a bit of a dead duck if the Steelers are rolled. But look, I think the Ravens have too much in their locker this time, and look, Lamar might struggle at times against Mike Tomlin and TJ Watt in the defense. But I think there's too much talent on the Ravens team, and I think George Pickens is the big key. That's a huge weapon for Wilson to be without. So I'm giving it to the Ravens this weekend.
Yeah, I'm also giving it to the Ravens. I think that Lamar Jackson might be able to find a way to pull out a good performance this week. I think he's coming into form. And the Baltimore defense, I think, will be a little bit stronger than they were last time out. Brian?
We're in danger territory, because I'm also going with the Ravens. Derrick Henry had a very, very quiet game last weekend, because he really didn't have to do anything in MetLife. But I think this is the type of game he was brought in for. Just a huge part of the season. I think they need to get this one over the line to put themselves in that sweepstakes to win the division. It's a Ravens victory for me as well.
Right, it's an Irish NFL show, Scoregami, I guess, if we all pick the same team between Steelers. I'd say I'll put my money on the Steelers to win that game now. Moving to the Sunday 6 o'clock games, the first one we're going to look at is the Arizona Cardinals at the Carolina Panthers. Cardinals 4.5-point favorites into this after giving a pretty serious beating to the New England Patriots last week. A win they desperately needed to get right back in the race for the NFC West, which at the moment seems like a bit of a lockdown between the Rams and the Seahawks. But the Seahawks lost last week on Monday. The Rams aren't a sure thing. Cardinals definitely need this one, and considering the Panthers in general haven't been one of the strongest teams in the league, you're not exactly 100% sure how much of a challenge they will face against. Brian, is this an easy win for Arizona, or can we expect the Panthers to put up a good challenge?
It's one of the more interesting games, I would say. I think you look at the schedule and you think you kind of sidestep this game, but there's a lot of storylines for the Cardinals in particular. They're only one game out of fourth place in the division. It feels like they're lost in a way, because everyone's getting the scrutiny of the Rams. The 49ers are having a difficult season, but I've been quite impressed with this Cardinals team. And I know they've lost the Seahawks, put the hammer down on them twice this season, but by and large, they played really well. And that Vikings game a couple of weeks ago still probably is a scorn to them, because they really should have got out of Minnesota with a victory. I think they'll win. I think they'll win well on Sunday. I think what we've seen over the course of last week in particular, I think the Panthers are starting to come back essentially to what we saw earlier in the season. They've had a nice little run, but the Cardinals need this badly. If the Cardinals win, they go into SoFi next weekend, and it's all to play for in that game. Where, if the Rams come out the right side of their game as well in against the Jets, I go Cardinals here. I think the Cardinals. I think we're at the stage of the season where certain teams need victories, and they'll go and get them. And for me, on Sunday, we might see McBride finally get his first touchdown of the season, which is a bizarre one, because his numbers are off the charts every week as a tight end, but yet he hasn't found the end zone. I think Sunday's the day he gets in.
No, I think the last few games, the Cardinals in particular have found it difficult to convert in the red zone. Even there was a couple of plays against the Patriots last week where they really should have got the job done once they got into the red zone, but they don't manage to finish. The last 4 games, they've done the hard part well and haven't been able to do the sort of easier part and actually finish things. If that gives the Panthers a route to stay in the game, considering this game is in Carolina, do you think there could be an upset on the cards?
Don't. We look at the Panthers, and obviously the last few weeks, things kind of, bar the game last week against the Cowboys. Prior to that, they were playing some really good teams, really close. Bryce Young was starting to look a bit more like the quarterback they hoped they'd got. And I think for the Panthers, that was the most important thing this year, especially the second half of the season when he came back. that their quarterback looks like he's not a lost cause, and that maybe he is going to be able to develop if they can get a bit more around him. But I think that little run, although unfortunately for them, they never got a win at the end of the day, they did still look a better team. But I don't fancy that to carry on into this weekend. As Brian said, the Cardinals are a game back. They have a couple of divisional games to end the season. You know, he mentions the Rams next week. Then they have the 49ers. Anything can happen against the 49ers, as we saw the last time the Cardinals played them. So I think they really need that this game this weekend. And I think, look, they're a team that have something to play for. The Panthers are a team that don't. And I think that's going to show. I know, as you mentioned, they do have red zone issues at times, but they still have enough firepower on this offense to take a Panthers team that are finished now and to overpower them and do what they need to do. I'm not overly sold on the Cardinals defense, but I don't think that will be too much of an issue now against this Panthers team. And I think on offense, they've just got too much. And as we said, it's an important game for the division, which is all up for grabs for all the teams pretty much at this stage going into the last 3 games of the season. So I think the Cardinals go in, do a job, and I think they'll beat the Panthers. I think they'll beat them well.
Kieran, what's your take?
Yeah, I think the West could be a photo finish. I think I jinxed the Panthers last week. I said they were playing hard for Dave Canales, and then they went out and laid an egg against the Cowboys. So I do, yeah. Look, I agree with Noel. They need more, and again, the Cardinals will come out on top, I think.
Yeah, as much as my heart wants the Panthers to win, my head tells me the Cardinals will get the job done here. Move on to another AFC North matchup between the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals. One which will probably be as toughly played as the other one we talked about, but not quite as sexy considering the stakes for both teams. Bengals are 7.5-point favorites here. Not surprising considering that they have had no problem scoring points. I think they're the 4th highest scoring offense in the league, despite the fact that they are still a couple of wins off being really in playoff contention. They need to win out to be in with even half a shout of finishing. I think 9-8 is what they're gunning for. Another quarterback change for the Browns, which is actually I can't remember the name of the guy they're going for. Seems like they seem to change quarterback every couple of weeks. Kieran, I find it very difficult to see a root for the Browns to win this one, but you never know in this division.
Yeah, forgive me as well, Shane. I was Googling the quarterback for the Browns today. So Dorian Thompson-Robinson is starting for the Browns this weekend. Yeah, and I did. I had to do a little bit of research on him. 12 career appearances, 3 starts. Came in from UCLA. So he's a couple of seasons in with the Browns, but look, he's seems like a bit of a journeyman unless there's something amazing is going to be revealed in the next couple of weeks. But for me, this is more about the Bengals. The Bengals have a 5% chance of making the playoffs at the moment. But look, where there's life, there's hope. You have one of the most potent offenses in the league, and we've talked about them time and time again. Interestingly enough, look, the Broncos and Chargers game tonight is, if the Chargers can take care of the Broncos, and if the Bengals can do the business this weekend, the Bengals then have the Broncos. They have a little bit of control over this situation. And then depending on whether the Chiefs slip up and whether the Chiefs are resting on the last week, if the Broncos can lose out and the Bengals can out, I know they need a little bit more help, but it's not impossible yet. Having said that, you look at the Bengals, they're 28th in total defense, 27th in passing, 20th in rush defense, 31st in scoring defense, giving up 27.6 points a game. Trey Hendrickson leads the league in sacks, but that's where it stops. Cam Taylor-Britt has a couple of nice highlight moments most weeks, but just you just can't trust a team with a defense that weak, and it's amazing how much they've regressed. But look, again, I've said it time and time again. I'd love to see this Bengals team pull it out and get to the playoffs. They're so exciting. Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks of this generation. And I think Nick Chubb he's out for the season, broken foot. So the Browns are they're fairly decimated themselves. They have very little to play for. They've had their own, they've had countless issues all season. The Bengals should get this game won. But you just never know with that defense. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, sorry. When I heard Dorian Thompson-Robinson is playing, it actually reminds me of the last time these two teams played against each other. 3 quarterbacks played in the same day for the Browns. Deshaun Watson, DTR, and Jameis Winston all had a go at throwing the ball. In terms of this actual matchup, I don't think that this is going to be the game that the Bengals are going to struggle with when it comes to their running in the season. They play against the Browns, at home against the Broncos, and then away to the Steelers on the final game of the week. So I think they will come in their mindset of try and punch them in the face, get them out of the way early, and then find a way to maybe not cruise, but just ensure that they have enough points scored. Because as soon as the Bengals get to a point where they score 21 points, then the Browns aren't going to catch up with them. It's as simple as that. So I don't want to dwell too much on this fixture. I think not that it's a foregone conclusion. It is really difficult to read. The Browns generally have been able to match up pretty well against the Bengals over the course of the last few years. The Bengals haven't done the double over the Browns since 2017, despite the fact that over those years, the Bengals have generally been the better football team. So anything really can happen here. This rivalry in Ohio does run very deep, but I just think that what Joe Burrow is going to do, what the lack of my confidence in the Cleveland Browns, and just the simple fact that the Bengals know full well that they have a half a chance of making the playoffs. They finished the season 9-8. There's a bit of a chance. Now, it would also, that does really depend on the Chargers and or the Broncos dumping it for the rest of the season, and they know that. But when it comes to coming into this game on Sunday, they're going to at least prove to the world that they are in with half a shot. So I think the Bengals are going to win this one. Brian?
I love it, guys. I love Kieran finding the roads to the playoffs for the Bengals. It would make for a very exciting end of the season. If the Chargers were to win this evening and the Bengals take care of business, as Kieran's alluded to, they play each other next weekend. Broncos going into Cincinnati. That's 9:30 next Saturday night. Another nice Saturday night games. It would make for a very interesting conversation come next week. All which is on the Bengals. I think the Bengals take care of business, but ultimately I don't think this narrative will go on for very long. I think even by the end of this weekend it could be over for them. But for this game, they'll win this one.
No, final word.
Yeah, I can't disagree with anybody. I think this Bengals have too much firepower. I think they'll go in and they'll win this game. But the playoffs, while an interesting little crack of life for them to concentrate on, will be tough. But I mean, what a turnaround if they were somehow managed to scrape that one. But whatever about that this weekend, I think they win.
All right, that's the end of our first segment. We'll be back talking about Giants at Falcons after this. Welcome back to part 2 of the Irish NFL Show's Week 16 preview. That break brought to you there by Buskers on the Ball, who shows Red Zone and a selection of NFL games every Sunday. Go in there, and when the NFL is on, all pints are €6. And when it comes to draft beer, it reminds me of the big draft shock this year when Michael Penix was drafted as the as number 8 overall, I think I remember, as the quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons, because especially considering they spent so much money on bringing in Kirk O'Chains to the not the Sunshine State, that's Florida, but into Georgia. Kirk Cousins is going to be benched for this one. Michael Penix is going to be the starter for the Atlanta Falcons as they host the New York Giants. The Falcons are coming into this as 9.5-point favorites. Brian, unfortunately, there is a dome over the stadium in Atlanta, which means that Giants fans will not be able to fly a plane over, or at least if they do, but only a few straddlers on the streets of Atlanta will be able to see it. Surely this is a game that Penix is going to have a nice bit of time to settle into his role as a starter, and the Giants aren't going to trouble them.
I think they're saving their money for the next playing, which will be in MetLife next Sunday when they face the Colts. But I think that playing will end up backfiring on this Giants team, because I think Brian Daboll is the kind of head coach that the more these things happen, the more he gets annoyed and the more he will motivate his team. And I don't want Penix playing. I'd rather Kirk Cousins playing, despite his frailties of 1 touchdown and 9 interceptions since the start of November, because rookies hit a wall early in their career. He hasn't played. Everyone's talking about Michael Penix like it's an assumption, because the Falcons have been playing so poorly. He's going to come in and have an immediate response to the team, and he may do. But we've also seen over the course of the last 2 years, opening games for rookies, no matter what the circumstances, whether it's week 1, week 6, week 7 in the season, They're 1-7, 8 rookies over the course of the last 2 years. The only rookie to win was Caleb Williams in week 1. And Noel will tell you rightly that that game was not down to Caleb Williams. The Bears didn't even score a touchdown. That was down to their defense getting them out of a hole and Will Levis doing mad things late on in the game. So I'm going to throw that one out there. Penix may play well. I think the Giants defense on Sunday, who actually played quite well over the course of the last few weeks, but maybe with the exception of last week's game, despite a lot of injuries, somehow will miraculously make it very difficult for him on Sunday. And if the Giants lose on Sunday, they will go from having the first pick in the draft to the 7th pick in the draft. And ultimately will then put themselves in quarterback hell once again. I don't want the Giants to win at this stage. It's pointless, but I think they will win on Sunday. I'm going with the Giants.
If they're picking the 7, they could end up getting the next Michael Penix. We don't know what's out there. You never know.
True, very true. Yeah, let's be fair. Lamar Jackson went to 32 in the draft. I get it, but when you get this close to the end of the season, like Noah would know very well a couple of years ago, where Lovie Smith was winning games for the Texans, which left the Bears picking number 1 in the draft as opposed to 2. We're at the stage of the season where there's very little to be gained by winning games, apart from maybe people within organizations hanging on to the jobs. The right thing would do. But players don't tank. But I think the Giants will win. I think they'll find their way to squeak it out. It's not like we're going against a team that's playing very well. The Raiders, who are in a similar situation, nearly beat this Falcons team on Monday night, bear in mind. So I'm going with the Giants.
Yeah, it's a good point, Kieran, that Brian raises the fact that although the Falcons come into this as 9.5-point favorites, it's a pretty big spread. They haven't been playing good football. Like, sure enough, they managed to get a win over the Raiders on Monday night, but you look at some of the results and even the nature of the play of some of the results. When they lost 38-6 a few weeks ago against the Broncos, it was absolute dire stuff. And you see the amount of interceptions that Kirk Cousins was throwing, other parts of their game. This is a division that they really should have been able to take control of, and they've definitely lost a bit of steam. So maybe the Falcons probably aren't as good as that 9.5-point spread says they are.
No, and while I don't necessarily think the Giants are going to win at the weekend. I do think that spread is massive, especially for a rookie, an untested rookie quarterback coming in. I won't speak too much on the Giants. I've heard the pain and passion in Brian and Kieran's voices over the last couple of weeks, and they're a better place to speak on the Giants than I am. But look, if you're neutral watching on, this is exciting to see a new quarterback again. There's going to be a bit of hype this week, and as you said, they might get a kick from him at the start. Looking at Michael Penix and what he should bring to the Falcons, he's a strong arm quarterback. That's one of his strengths. He gets the ball down the field. Weakness then is that he can be inaccurate on short intermediate throws. So word is that they're not going to hold him back. They're not going to give him some kind of a watered down playbook. He's going to try and get the ball deep early and often, and I mean that makes for good viewing, whether it's good or bad for the Falcons. So whether the Giants have the secondary to take advantage of that, maybe Thibodeau might be licking his lips a bit on those short and intermediate throws. But look, I'm just interested to see, can Michael Penix elevate those talented receivers that we have seen bear fruit for the Atlanta Falcons this year. I mean, Drake London is a top receiver. Darnell Mooney and Ray-Ray McLeod, they're decent. They're decent weapons. I think Kyle Pitts he's 10th in receiving yards for all tight ends in the league. And then Bijan Robinson 5th in rushing. He's over 1,000 yards. So Michael Penix isn't going in there on his own at the weekend. He's got plenty around him, and maybe that's why the Falcons were probably hyped up a little bit more than they've managed to live up to. And look, Kirk Cousins hasn't, he hasn't helped the situation. In that he hasn't found the consistency that you'd want from a veteran leader. Interesting to see what happens to Kirk Cousins now going forward. That's probably a discussion for another day. He might find his Joe Flacco moment with some other team down the line. I'm not too sure if he'll be a Falcon next year, but look, I think the Falcons should have enough in their locker, and I think things have been going so badly for the Giants. I don't think they'll win this game, but they certainly could well cover the spread.
No.
Yeah, I agree with what Kieran said there. I think the spread is too big for me. I think this Falcons team are so untrustworthy at the moment, but it is fascinating with a rookie quarterback coming in. I liked a lot of what he did at college. That big arm of his was really intriguing for a lot of scouts and teams. And I think the way it is, I've never seen him play in the NFL, but I still trust this Falcons quarterback against whatever the Giants quarterback situation is. So I think the Falcons will scrape a win, But yeah, I think they'll do what they need to do to win. But again, they're not the most reliable team. But Yeah, I think that's it. The Giants don't fill me with too much confidence. So
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Falcons as well, for the simple fact that if Penix manages to throw 2 interceptions, are you trusting the Giants to make them pay and to make those interceptions, turn those interceptions into scores? No. So I'm going with the Falcons on that one. We move on now to the Detroit Lions at the Chicago Bears. Interesting one. This is only the second time this season that the Detroit Lions have had to play outside. They've played every other game so far this season, bar one, I think, which is when they visited Lambeau Field, if I'm correct in saying. Every other game has been played in a dome. This one is going to be on the very, very chilly shoreline of Lake Michigan as they travel to Soldier Field. No, we were there when the Bears played the Lions in the reverse fixture on Thanksgiving. I'm pretty sure somewhere the Bears coaching staff, which has since been ousted, is still waiting to use that timeout, which they never used. I don't know whether there's plenty in here for the Bears to concoct a revenge game, because that was a game, it's certainly in the way that the Bears came back in the second half and then mismanaged it in the end. I think a lot of their players might feel that they are better than the Lions and they can get a win over the Lions. But you, as the Bears fan, as the one who's been watching this probably more closely than the rest of us, do you think that is something which can actually happen?
no, I think the Bears are done. I think the Bears have so many issues that even as Bears fans that we kind of, I don't know if we deliberately glossed over or if we genuinely didn't see them, but a lot of issues have come to light with this Bears team recently. You know, it feels like the last couple of weeks, we talk about these divisional games and how they play each other hard. And even if the Bears lose, they generally play the Vikings, the Vikings, the Lions, and the Packers close. Well, that got dispelled last week when the Vikings came out and took care of the Bears. And a lot of that just be on a Bears defense that recently against the 49ers, against the Vikings, looks like it's starting to slow down a bit. And once that Bears defense slows down, there's a lot of problems on offense. The offensive line, which isn't great anyway, is decimated week on week. It's musical chairs on who's at right guard, who's at left tackle, and it's flip flopping about. Caleb has a few issues which are kind of starting to really show up again, and it just feels like this Bears team, they didn't get the new coach boost, and it just feels like they're just kind of trudging along now to the finish line. They feel kind of done. Now, I know we look at a Lions team, which this is a big game for the Lions. It's obviously a get right. I say a get right game after they put 42 points up last week. But this is a get right game for the Lions in this battle with the Vikings to just get a W and keep themselves just up there on top of the division. With the obviously the Vikings have a tough game this weekend, so the Lions will be looking, if the Vikings don't get a win, to capitalize. And we know they're decimated on defense. I just don't think the Bears have an offense to capitalize on that. And even with David Montgomery gone on offense, which is massive for the Lions, they still have so many weapons there. I mean, they didn't have a great game last weekend in terms of rushing, but, you know, Jared Goff ends up with 494 yards passing and 5 touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs, you know, even with Montgomery gone, he doesn't do much on the ground, but he gets 83 yards and a touchdown through the air. Then you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown there and Sam Laporta. So I think this is an important game for the Lions to get back on track to get a win. I think it's so important for them in this battle with the Vikings for the division. And I just think the Bears on defense have almost thrown their hat in. And, you know, with that, once this Bears defense goes, there is nothing left. Plus, we've an interim head coach who it just doesn't seem to have worked, who was doing okay at offensive coordinator, and he was just okay. They should have left him there, but he got the interim job, which feels like it's taken a lot of his attention and taken it away from the offense, which seems to not be looking too good now either. So all in all, I think the Lions, even with injuries, are too strong. They've too much on the line for this game. It's a great chance for them just to keep that pressure in on the Lions or on the Vikings, and the Bears are done. So Lions for me.
Yeah, I'm looking at this one, and I genuinely think that if the Lions had won last week, they would be more susceptible to being defeated this week. But I think the fact that they lost last week, even though they scored 42 points, yes, they conceded 48 to Josh Allen in Detroit. Something about the grit, the mentality, the way they work, the way that Dan Campbell inspires his troops. Even like there was some stuff during the week when he was on public radio and he kept swearing, even though it's an FRC regulated channel. I had to keep bleeping him out and sort of saying come on. He seemed like a very passionate man. He wanted to try and get his guys going. And look, even listening to him, I listened to like 30 seconds of the clip and I wanted to run through a wall for him. That's just the nature of the guy he is. And the fact that they're coming off a loss, I think makes them more dangerous here. Two things holding back the Lions, though. Firstly, you look at the amount of players that have an IR. Most teams at this time of year are roughly around the 10, 11, 12 player mark on injured reserve. The Lions have 22 players on injured reserve. They have lost a lot of depth, a lot of talent. And look, there's only so much you can lose before it really starts affecting your ability to perform. And we remember it against the Bears last time out on Thanksgiving Day. They didn't take full control. Yeah, they had a fantastic first half, but the Bears managed to find a way back in, so much so that the Bears had a chance to win the game. It was the Bears' fault that they didn't take it. It wasn't really down to something that the Lions did. Secondly, the fact that David Montgomery is missing, that Sonic and Knuckles duo, the offense was definitely designed for that to be a big part of it, for the only one of those guys to be in there. It's going to take a couple of weeks for Detroit to really figure out what's the best way to use Jahmyr Gibbs on his own. The good thing for them, though, is they're facing against a Bears team who are the 26th in the league when it comes to rushing defense. And, the Bears defense can get sacks. They're half decent in the pass game. They're not any good in the run games. I think the Lions are going to use this as an opportunity to test out the run game in the Windy City by the chill of Lake Michigan. And as well as that, am I right in saying the last two games against divisional opponents the Bears have had, against the Vikings and the Packers respectively, a field goal or something crazy happening around a field goal is what decided it? Why not go for 3 for 3? Bears have a chance to win it at the end, or something goes wrong on special teams. You just know that's in terms of the narratives and the look and the camera that's on both the Lions and the Bears side. If you're wondering, Jesus, are special teams gonna account for something here? It's probably going to count for the Lions, and for that reason, amongst others, I am going for the Lions to win this one. Kieran,
I think the momentum that the Bears kind of built up in those few close losses, those respectable losses, I think it's kind of fallen apart again the last couple of weeks. I think the Lions are going to have too much this weekend. Even though the Lions have had their troubles and they continue to have their struggles, I think it's going to be a Lions victory.
Brian?
I'm not playing catch-up or anything. I'm not doing this just to try find a way of, putting in results where you going another way. But I am going to go with the Bears this weekend, because I'm not just reflecting on this season. I'm reflecting on last year when the Bears should have won in Detroit, where Justin Fields had the game in his hands, and they had a double-digit lead with like less than 2.5 minutes to go in the game. They ended up beating them in Chicago thereafter. They should have beaten them a couple of weeks ago, or at least got the game into overtime. And I think the injuries are a bigger concern and a bigger talking point for the Lions coming out of last week's loss, as opposed to how they played and how they performed defensively. And the defense right now that is allowing teams to put up points on them. If the Bears can do enough offensively, keeping the game, I think they find a way to get out and squeak a victory and cause a big shock. So I'm going to go with the Bears.
Right, we're going coast to coast now in the first game of the 9 o'clock window as the LA Rams travel to face the New York Jets. Kieran, I don't know if you've been watching the Aaron Rodgers documentary this week, by the way. I haven't tuned into it yet. I have been reading some of his book, though, and he's definitely the kind of person who, now we're at the part of the season when we're not talking about playoffs, but we are talking specifically about his own personal future, whether that will bring out the best in him, because people aren't talking about the team, the Jets, anymore. They're talking about whether Aaron Rodgers actually has a place in the National Football League next season. We saw it the last couple of weeks where I think that the Jets offense has been playing a little bit better than they have been over the course of the year. They're facing against a Rams team who are still very much in the running to top their division. Do you see this one? What way do you see this one going?
Well, there was some beautiful magic last week with the old Rodgers-Adams connections, and it was lovely to see. It was especially as a nostalgic Packers fan. And I've started the documentary. I'm slowly working my way through it. I got over my foot issue, but it's been an interesting watch. I suppose it covers a lot of what I talked about in his biography, the book Out of the Darkness a few weeks ago. So you're getting to put faces to names, and it is an interesting watch. And it is, the way he's played last week and the numbers he's shown that he can still potentially put up is I suppose it's stoking the fires a little bit to see, is there any chance that he'll be a Jet again next year? And he's come out, I think, this week. You have to kind of shuffle through all the rubbish and the nonsense to find, something substantial, football related, and something genuine. He has said that if he's a Jet next year, and if they decide to draft a quarterback, he's happy to mentor him and compete for his job. Maybe that'll give people in the front office a bit of reassurance, and maybe he'd be worth the punt again next year. I'm not quite so sure. My focus on this game again is the Rams. Look, the Rams are the league's hot commodity at the moment. I'm at risk of contradicting myself here. I mentioned in this show a few weeks ago that 6 field goals won't win you a championship, and that caused concern with the Steelers. The Rams went out and they scored 12 points on 4 field goals last week against the 49ers, and I'd argue that was their best win of the season. I listened to Sean McVay and listened to Matt Stafford after, and I thought they were great in their reaction to the game. Obviously, they weren't thrilled with what they produced on offense, but it was hugely reassuring and galvanizing for Matt Stafford to say, look, these are the kind of wins that really, really strengthen a team way into the, with playoff hopes, because when you're not playing your best stuff on offense, and they've shown week after week that they can lean on Puka Nacua and they can lean on Cooper Kupp, but last week they leaned on their defense, and Matt Stafford was very, I just thought he was very genuine, just very selfless in his praise of the defense. They had 3 sacks, 5 tackles for losses. That's fine, but I said the secondary, they were like Lionel Richie all night long. They were breaking up passes every time that Purdy tried to push the ball down the field. They were touch tight. They were just breaking up passes all night long, and I thought it was really, really super performance by the secondary. I know we talk about Jared Verse a lot, but the secondary, a lot of guys that wouldn't be household names really stepped up for the Rams last week, and they're in control of the West at the moment. They control their own destiny. This is a game that they should win. But the Jets, you never know. The Jets do have that talent, the talent that we predicted or that we hoped they would have all season. They still have it, possibly have it in their locker to cause an upset or two in the run, and just to annoy us a little bit more. The Rams are a team I'd like to see in the playoffs. Maybe not as a Packers fan. I might regret saying that, but as I said, you want these entertaining teams in the playoffs if you're a neutral. So I do think the Rams will have enough for the Jets at the weekend.
My apologies, by the way. This isn't a 9 o'clock game. This is, in fact, a 6 o'clock game. I got a little bit mixed up in that for anybody who is planning to watch this game, or Rams or Jets fans, I may have spooked in terms of their Sunday plans. Interesting one, though. No, sometimes when these Western teams go coast to coast, there's always a narrative around whether something tires them out or whether they can be sort of, I guess, up for the taking. And the same is going to be talked about when the Rams travel to play in the cold of New York. It's definitely very different than playing at 4 p.m. Eastern time in the sunshine of Southern California. But I don't know whether that is really enough to make people think that the Jets can really upset a Rams team that are certainly at one of their stronger points of the season.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's an interesting question to bring up, and I know you can look at the stats of the teams from West Coast traveling across, but I think at this stage of the season now, they're well into it now. This is a team we've mentioned that this NFC West is up for grabs there, and as Kira mentions, they're top of the pile at the moment with it in their own hands, and this is going to be an interesting game because the Jets are a team who I had obviously much higher expectations for this year. I picked them a lot when they just didn't seem to be able to get out of their own way, and they'd end up throwing away games this way or that way. They have the talent there. They have good players on both offense and defense, but for whatever reason this season, it just hasn't been right. Then we look at last week. Okay, it's the Jags, a Mac Jones Jags. So, they put it up to them, but the Jets get the win. We have Rodgers and Adams looking like the old Rodgers and Adams there with almost 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. So that's something that the Rams certainly have to be wary of. The Jets, as bad as they may have been, or as inconsistent as they may have been, they have it in their locker to step up and have a good game if necessary. So the Rams really do need to watch out for that. But again, I think this Rams team are too strong. Kieran mentions the defense. They have some good, really young, explosive defensive players on there that cause teams all sorts of trouble. And then you just look at an offense. Okay, granted, they didn't have touchdowns last week. They had field goals, but still, you've got Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams. He's having a phenomenal season this year, over 1,000 yards. I think he's about 12 touchdowns. So he's a player that can worry you. And then an experienced quarterback like Matt Stafford to kind of tie it all together. And for me, again, like we've said on a couple of games, this is a game they need because of how tight that photo finish, as Kieran mentioned earlier, is in the West. This is a game the Rams really need to step up. And they've had their injury issues this season, which obviously knocked them back a bit. But I think now it feels like on defense, these young guys are flying. On offense, it feels now like they've got that game time. They've got the reps. They've got their players back. Yeah, and I think the Rams, it's too important for them now. They've everything to play for, and I think they'll be too strong for a Jets team, even in a climate that maybe not what they're used to at home.
Yeah, I'm going to hit the hurry-up offense in this one and just say I think the Rams are going to win this one. Brian?
Yeah, Rams offense rebounds and scores a number of touchdowns. It's a Rams victory for me as well.
We move on now to the Philadelphia Eagles, who travel to play against the Washington Commanders. If Eagles win this game, they clinch the division. It's as simple as that. And it would also seal their 11th win in a row. They've already won 10 games in a row, which is a franchise record in Philadelphia. Certainly, they are looking exceptionally strong and stronger each week. The fact that, as I alluded to earlier, the caliber of offense they've beaten, or caliber team they've beaten in recent weeks include the Steelers and the Ravens, and they've done so not easily, but certainly they look exceptionally strong in those games, and credit has to be given to them there. Eagles are 3.5 points favorites in this one, and I'm first in the list. I think the Eagles are going to win this one by roughly 3 points. I don't think it's going to be a sort of dominant performance. I think they might have to grind this one out a little bit, and I think that for two reasons. Firstly, when we see how teams in this division play against each other, it's generally quite tough. I think the Commanders are going to come into this expecting a letdown game from the Eagles' point of view. And as well as that, Saquon Barkley, who's been the main X factor of the Eagles offense, is still carrying a bit of an injury. It cost him a lot of snaps against the Steelers last week. He wasn't practicing a whole lot this week. He'll play. He'll make a difference, but he's not going to, run for 7,000 yards or whatever it is he's doing most weeks. And I think the Eagles will be sort of conscious of how much they want to put him out there in the first place, considering they know full well that even if they lose this game, they're still looking ahead to being one of the top seeds, if not the top seed in the NFC. But they will still, I think Jalen Hurts might be able to step up to find a way to get a W in the column here in Washington, because they really, really want somebody in the NFC North to drop a bit of a dud so they can sneak in and become the number one seed. To do that, they need to get this win here, and I think they're going to do it. Brian, you know the NFC East probably better than most of us. You've said that that in a division where no team has managed to win it back-to-back in over 20 years, surprising things can happen. And I don't want to say it's necessarily a surprise if the Commanders win, because they have been playing pretty good this season. But in order to stop this Eagles juggernaut, I think they're going to have to pull out a pretty good performance, Jaden Daniels in particular.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think the Commanders have been playing at the level in which we saw earlier on in the season. They got out to a comfortable lead last weekend and nearly let that one slip. But the Saints, obviously, with nothing to play for, went for that 2-point conversion at the end. The Eagles have got a lot to play for here. We're discussing earlier the Lions winning and the impact of a Vikings result in Seattle. But this is a team that are right in the mix for this one seed, and they'll probably feel the other teams will knock each other off and they'll go and win this game. I don't think the Commanders can win this game personally. I think the line is quite light. Actually, we're talking about different various handicaps over the course of the last hour. I think this one is very fruitful for people who want to put a few quid on the Eagles on Sunday. 3.5 points. I can see them covering it. So I just don't think the Commanders can go toe to toe with this Eagles offense. I think it'll be a high scoring game, and I think the Commanders will do a good service to themselves, but I think ultimately they'll come short. I think the Eagles have too much to play for. This game is really big for the Commanders, though. I would say that because we're talking about seedings, we're talking about potential them slipping out a 7th seed. There is a scenario where the NFC West could fulfill a divisional winner and a 7th seed. The way things could play out, the Commanders really need this one. They got the Falcons coming to town the following week. They got to go into Dallas. We saw what the Cowboys did to them earlier in the season. They really need this, but I think ultimately the Eagles will come out on top.
No.
Yeah, I think the Eagles for me. I think the Lions, are the best team in the NFC. But given all the injuries and stuff, it could be argued now for me that the Eagles actually could be the best team in the NFC with the fitness that they have with that roster. But I think they're way too strong. I think they'll win this weekend.
And final word to you, Kieran.
Yeah, the Eagles, they shut us up last week by winning through the air after all the AJ Brown talk. So, whether they do it on the ground or through the air, I think they have too much. And their defense is one of the best defenses in the league as well. It's probably not spoken about enough. And I do think that the Commanders will come unstuck against them this week.
Right, we put 3 games into the quick hit section this week. The first one is the Tennessee Titans at the Indianapolis Colts. Interesting one. The Titans have benched Will Levis for this one. Mason Rudolph is making a Christmas comeback. He will be the quarterback for Tennessee. I'm going to go first. I'm backing the Titans to win this one. And I never thought I'd say that because I've been pretty down on the Titans all year, and I've been up on the Colts for much of the year as well. But honestly, the Colts did so much dumb shit last week. I'm not expecting them, especially in a home stadium, which will be on their backs from doing some pretty ridiculous stuff. I think the Titans, with the new quarterback coming in, they'll know how to become a banana skin the same way that they were for the Houston Texans a couple of weeks ago. I think this has the hallmark of a surprising divisional win. 10 points to 7, doesn't matter. Titans for me. Brian?
Quick hits, Shane. Quick hits, this is supposed to be. Colts victory for me.
Kieran?
Colts as well, yeah. Colts.
And no.
Colts.
Right, I will keep this quick. Jacksonville Jaguars travel to the Las Vegas Raiders in the first of the 9 o'clock games. This one actually is at 9 o'clock, not as I was saying earlier. I'm going for the Raiders in this one. We'll go to you, Noel.
Yeah, Raiders for me as well.
Kieran?
With Crosby gone, give it to the Jags.
Oh, fair enough. And Brian?
I need a Raiders victory, and I'll side with the Raiders. Raiders to win.
You're manifesting that one. And finally, interesting one that the good folks at CBS decided to put a turkey shoot on the air for at 9 o'clock rather than 6 o'clock as the New England Patriots travel to face against the Buffalo Bills. For me, it's not the question of whether the Bills will win, but by how much they will win by. So, yeah, give me Buffalo in that one. Kieran?
Yeah, Buffalo cover whatever the spread is. I don't know what it is, but yeah, they'll cover it.
No?
Pats can't win this one. Bills for me.
Because I thought you were going to say the Pats are going to win for a second.
I know, that's what I was doing to you, Shane. That's what I was doing.
All right, and final word to you, Brian, in the battle of Drake and Josh.
Noel's playing games with you. Kieran, the spread is 14 points. 20 to 25 point victory for the Bills on Sunday.
You think it's going to be close? It's a shock. All right, anyway, we've come into, we're about to head into our final segment, so we're going to take a quick break and come back to you with the final part of our Week 16 preview. Welcome to part 3 of our Week 16 preview. We're moving on to the battle of the Minnesota Vikings and Seattle Seahawks, 2 teams in their own battles for playoff supremacy in 2 different divisions. The Vikings obviously being the stronger team over the course of the season. The Seahawks, who hosted an NFC North team on Sunday Night Football and really did not cover themselves in any great blaze of glory. Weird as well that there was a lot of Packers fan in Seattle. Supposedly the great home field advantage that they always have for these experiences was definitely undone by the Packers faithful. I wonder if the Minnesota faithful might be able to do something similar. No, when you're looking at what's happening on the field, I think it's potentially be a close matchup, but you have to wonder whether one team has a bigger sense of X factor than the other.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting game, obviously, because as you say, both teams have so much to play for. We've talked about the West a number of times tonight and how tight that is. And the Seahawks are right there in the mix, up there with the Rams. So for them, this is a massive game. And obviously, we look at last weekend, potential injury to Geno Smith, who now looks like he will be playing this weekend. So that is huge because I don't think Sam Howell coming in would give them a path to victory. I think Geno Smith, while I'm not fully confident in him, I still think he is obviously the top quarterback there, and he would be important for them going into these last 3 weeks to try and really push for the West. But for me, I still look at this Vikings team. I look at the way they've just quietly gone about this all season, and it's only recently where we've really started talking about them because they've just been a machine. We know they had a bit of a blip midway through the season, but other than that, they have just absolutely been dominating teams. We look at Sam Darnold. People keep asking, when is the real Sam Darnold coming back? Well, as I say, look at the firepower around. He has him now, and Kevin O'Connell there working with him. Maybe this is the real Sam Darnold when you give him a good roster and a sensible franchise and a top head coach to work with him. So I just look at this Vikings team. I think they've got the bit between the teeth now. They're chasing down the Lions. They look at a Lions team that have a lot of injuries that I don't, as we talked about, I don't think they slip up against the Bears this week. But the Vikings will go into every game just thinking, if the Lions slip up, we're there to really take advantage. Seahawks, it's been a really good first year for this head coach. He's still in there fighting for the division. But I still worry. I still wonder if, like last weekend against the Packers, whether they just have enough to really put it up to these good teams when they go up against them. And then this weekend, injury-wise, now I think Kenneth Walker may play, but I know Kenneth Walker didn't train yesterday. Zach Charbonnet didn't train yesterday. That running game is very important for these teams. So if these players, if they do play, if they're still not 100%, that could be a big issue going up against the Vikings team that really is cruising at the moment. So for me, I think, again, the Vikings have too much at stake with that potential number one position in the NFC. With the kind of weapons they have there. Sam Darnold is playing out of his skin at the moment. And give me the Vikings to go in and to have a really good win against a Seahawks team who will put up a fight, but I just don't think will be strong enough to take out the Vikings.
Yeah, Kieran, it's an interesting one for the Vikings. I think the pressure is really coming on them because of the fact that the Lions have lost. They will see this now as an opportunity to really put the pressure on the top, and knowing full well that their next two games are against the Packers and the Lions. So they really will not want to drop this one.
No, and in the last few weeks, I suppose the volume has been turned up a bit on the Vikings, and people really are getting, I suppose, starting to give them the props that they fully deserve. That top to bottom, they've been one of the more consistent teams in the league. It's really hard to find a weak spot on this Vikings team. I love the Sam Darnold story. I think if this has been the year of the power running back, or the return of the power running back, it might also be the year of quarterback redemption in the form of Sam Darnold. I think they'll have eyes. Obviously, they have eyes on the number one seed, and they'll be watching the Lions and the Lions. I suppose the injuries that they've picked up, even if they could win the North, I think they mightn't catch both the Eagles and the Lions. Sorry, should look they're neck and neck with them. Anything could happen, I suppose. But Sam Darnold, he's been a force this year. He's 6th in yards. He's 4th in passer rating, 104.9 passer rating in the league. He's a top 10 quarterback in every regard. And, when you've got Justin Jefferson second only to Jamar Chase with 1,243 yards and Jordan Addison backed in behind him, I think they're, they have reasons to be confident every week they go out. And we all know about Aaron Jones. As much as I miss him, he's doing a fine job for the Vikings as well. For the Seahawks, I agree with a lot of what Noel said. I think, look, if they had to rely on Sam Howell, I think their season would be over essentially. Coming in to start it this late in the season, it just would have been done. Gino gives them some bit of hope. Now, they're coming off a game where the quarterbacks, they passed for a combined total of 128 yards and they got sacked 7 times by the Packers. So, having said that, they've been one of the better passing teams in the league in terms of yards thrown, and the reason to be hopeful that when you look for matchups, they're coming up against the Vikings, who are 29th in pass defense. They're giving up 244.9 yards a game. So if Gino can get the ball out, get the ball down the field to Smith and Jigba, get DK Metcalf going, who has lost that little bit of consistency, but we all know he's a big play guy. He's that kind of a player that could catch fire. Get the ball to Noah Fant. There's absolutely reason to be hopeful. I mentioned the photo finish. You want this 3-horse race to keep going. You want that bit of excitement going into the last week of the season. You want meaningful games wherever you can get them. So I give the Seahawks hope, but I do think the Vikings are just too consistent at the moment. Every time I think the Vikings are going to be caught, and believe me, I want them to be caught. They've let me down anyway. But no, I do think they've been steady all the way through the season, and I think they'll get over the Seahawks as well this weekend.
Well, I'll give you a bit of hope. I think the Seahawks are going to win this one for 2 reasons. Firstly, I think that the way the Green Bay defend matches up better with the Seahawks offense than the way Minnesota defends, I think, linking to some of the points you made. And secondly, Geno Smith has been pretty banged up last week. He's still a little bit banged up with a knee injury, but I think he's going to be feeling a bit better this week. And the way that the Seahawks offense in primetime last week, I think was the exception and not the rule. So I'm going to go with the Seahawks. Brian?
Vikings for me, I think Aaron Jones and Kieran rightly called it out, has been one of the better off-season acquisitions, probably one of the most underrated off-season acquisitions. I think he'll be the leading night on Sunday, and he will drive this team to another victory. It's the Vikings for me.
Final game in that 9 o'clock window is the battle between the San Francisco 49ers as they travel to the Miami Dolphins. Both of these teams, not quite sure how much we'll dwell on this one, Brian, but both of these teams, I think, are still technically in the hunt for playoff position, but both of them have definitely lost a hell of a lot of momentum, and another loss for either of these teams would pretty much end their season. Dolphins going into this as 1-point favorites, maybe a reflection of the fact that they are playing with home comforts, but I don't know whether that will necessarily be enough in this particular game. What way do you see this one landing?
Well, if Kieran's giving the Bengals a show, I'm going to give the Dolphins a show, because you look at their schedule and what they've got left. They play against the 49ers team that are completely banged up. They've ruled out essentially 4 or 5 more players this week for the remainder of the season. They got to play the Browns, and then they finish off with the Jets. And whilst that will be a tough game, I think if we get to week 18 and the Dolphins really need that game, I think they'll find a way to go into MetLife and get a victory. So I think there's too many injuries now on this 49ers team. If this was all things equal and 49ers have had all their key and marquee players available, did go and win this game. But ultimately, I think the Dolphins back at home in Miami, it's much more suitable. The atmosphere might be a bit better. The weather certainly will be better for them. And I think the Dolphins, I like this one. -1 point for a game, essentially a field goal type of game. I'm going to lean with the Dolphins to get out of this one with a victory and keep their season just about alive.
No, one of the hallmarks of their loss against the Texans last week was the fact that I think Tua Tagovailoa ended up throwing 3 interceptions, and they very much channeled a lot of their hopes through his ability. And I just wonder whether the 49ers defense might be able to find a way to impact that. But at the same time, I think what Brian is maybe alluding to is maybe the fact that they are back at home after that experience, that Tua might be able to put in a much more tidier performance. What way do you see this?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Brian said. I think you look at his 49ers team, and they're just, and technically they're 2 games out in the division, and who knows what can happen, division games coming up, but they're just too banged up. I mean, when I look at these results, their last 5 results, their 1 win in those 5 was against the Bears, and they put up 38 points, which is shocking, because in every other game they've scored 6, 10, 10, and 17 against the Seahawks. This is a 49ers team that is in absolute disarray at the moment. They've lost so much. They'll be shell shocked with how this season is gone, but it's where they are. They seem to be just limping along. As I say, the Bears game is the only game they've won recently, and you know, the Bears, well, I've got my feelings on them earlier on against a Dolphins team which, you know, feel a bit more inconsistent. They have the talent on there. They don't have the injury issues like the 49ers. Just at times they haven't put it together. But I think this weekend, I think Tua had one of his worst games last week, what you used to say, with the 3 interceptions. I just have a feeling this week they're going to be too strong for a 49ers team that is just fighting to stay relevant in that division, and they're not good enough at the moment. I think the Dolphins have enough weapons on hand to take out a 49ers team that have pretty much been done now this season.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Dolphins on this. Maybe because I flipped a coin earlier to see which way it landed, because I couldn't really decide. But I think in the main, it's because I think that if you look at these 2 teams, they're both at 6-8. The Dolphins are playing like a 6-8 team. The San Francisco 49ers aren't even playing that good. So I think the Dolphins might have the edge in this one. Kieran?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the Dolphins are going to win it. You know, I said a while ago, where there's life, there's hope. And I think the Dolphins have that just little bit more hope than the 49ers at the moment, and that'll edge it for them.
On the Sunday Night Football now, the battle between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Dallas Cowboys. The attention will always be high because it is the Dallas Cowboys. If anybody hasn't seen, by the way, there is a new trailer out for a Netflix documentary. And in it, Jerry Jones basically described the Dallas Cowboys being a soap opera 365 days a year. Well, thanks, Jerry. We kind of figured that out. Interesting part about this Dallas Cowboys soap opera, though, is that Cooper Rush as quarterback is 3-1 in the last 4 games, and he's kept them sort of alive, but they're facing against a Buccaneers team who put 40 points on the best defense in the league last week when they came out of Los Angeles. And I just think coming into this, like, not only are we talking about about Baker Mayfield and what he's able to do on a good day. And look, we know that the Buccaneers, when they play good, everyone looks at them as, oh my God, they're awesome. And they are capable of just dropping duds and not being able to fully build the consistency of a team, which we can talk about as being playoff contenders, as in not as in contenders to make the playoffs, but contenders to go deep into the playoffs. And you have to wonder whether the Cowboys are the kind of side who can capitalize on that. You look what they can do in defense. You look at the fact that they've been a little bit more quietly confident in what they're doing on offense. But I just think that the Buccaneers have too much talent, particularly when you look at the talent they have outside of Baker Mayfield. I mean, Bucky Irving is now at a point where he's averaging nearly 6 yards a carry. That's pretty good going for a team which is supposedly scraping to win the NFC South. So I think the Buccaneers are going to come out of this one victorious. Brian, is there a route for the Cowboys though to not keep the season alive, but I guess put a spanner in the Buccaneers' works?
I think there is to a certain extent, because offensively, despite Dak Prescott going out of the team because of the injury, the season-ending injury, and obviously the difficult hamstring injury he's been operating on, I think Cooper Rush is one of those better kind of solid backup quarterbacks. And we've seen over the course of the last 2 years when he plays, like he's struck up such a great relationship with CeeDee Lamb. We saw it last week. It was very evident down in Carolina. People will argue the Panthers' season's over, and they put a number down on the week prior to that. They played against the Bengals team, and it was a high-scoring game, and the Bengals came out the right side of it because of a muff punt late on in the game where they blocked the punt, and ironically, they should have left the ball alone. If they didn't, they went to pick it up, and they ended the fumble it, and that's where the Bengals getting the victory. They played well offensively over the course of the last 5 or 6 games. We've seen them cause a shock earlier in the season when Washington were riding high. They went in and put a huge score up on them as well, albeit some special teams touchdowns. But I think Kieran called it out on Monday. This is a Bucs team right now that are really kind of grasping the net and putting up 40 points in SoFi. It was no relative Chargers team whose defense is playing really well this season. But this Bucs team right now offensively have been playing really well, and they've got the players to get these games over the line. We saw when they struggled a few weeks ago against the Panthers and went to overtime. They've got the experience there. Like Mike Evans is again having another fantastic season. So for me, I think it'll be a high-scoring game on Sunday Night Football. I think the Cowboys will play relatively well, but I think ultimately the team that needs it most is the Bucs, and they find a way to come out on top.
Kieran?
I mentioned quarterback redemption a while ago, and for some reason I completely blanked on Baker Mayfield, so apologies. The Bucs.
And no.
Yeah, I agree with the lads. I think the Bucs is the way to go for this game.
Very much so. We move on to the final game of the week, which is Monday Night Football, as the New Orleans Saints travel to Kieran's beloved Green Bay Packers. The Packers in this game are 14-point favorites. 14 points. That's how much of a gulf in class that certainly the bookies and Quinbet and all the other guys are looking at this game. I have to say though, like out of all the slots during a week when mad things happen, I think Monday Night Football is definitely one of those where shocking results are definitely feel maybe a little bit more possible. Maybe I'm looking at this through a weird lens, Kieran, or maybe I'm setting you up to be a bit more scared for this game than you should be. Packers are 14-point favorites. You think they will be able to back that up?
I think at this point of the season they should be able to back it up. I mean, if they're going to live up to the, again, kind of like the Vikings, the hype is kind of growing on the Packers a little bit. This is a game that they should win. And for that reason, I think they must win it. You know, it's not necessarily a must win for seedings. It's not necessarily a must win for playoffs, even though they're not locked in yet. But I think, again, just to stick their chest out a little bit and tell the rest of the league that they mean business, they need to be taking care of this game. Look, I think the formula needs to be the same. I think Matt LaFleur has shown his cards very much this season. I mentioned the year of the running back, and Josh Jacobs he's one of the best power runners at the moment. He touched the ball 10 of the first 11 times in the last game. So like, I mean, that's if it's a winning formula, I can't see them sticking with it. But I just do want to look at Jordan Love and look. I think confidence has been growing in Jordan Love, just like it did last year. He seemed to kind of turn it on later on in the season. I don't know whether it's because of Jordan Love or because Matt LaFleur has been protecting him a little bit more and just being a little bit more careful with his schemes. But it is interesting to note that Jordan Love, he has put up some decent statistics this year. He's 7th in QBR. He's thrown 7th. He's 7th in touchdowns, 23 Tied with Aaron Rodgers, would you believe? He can't seem to get away from Aaron Rodgers. But the most interesting stat, on a positive note, I think from Jordan Love's point of view, is he's only been sacked 11 times. There's no quarterback below him of note, no true starter below him in that category. And I know he's missed some games, but just for comparison, CJ Stroud's been sacked 45 times, Darnold 42, Mahomes 35, and Spencer Rattler, who's only played 4 games and when he comes up against this week, has been sacked 14 times. Now I know Jordan Love he's shown some pocket presence and the ability to escape, but that's just, I think for the most part, that's a credit to the offensive line. And it's maybe an unheralded weapon. The offensive line has really been outstanding for the Packers in protecting Love, in blocking for Jacobs, and they deserve a lot of credit. And if they can keep that consistency, there's a lot of hope going into the, I suppose, hopefully, fingers crossed I don't jinx them, going into the playoffs and maybe beyond. But I think for the Packers, the bigger picture is, I suppose what will tell for this season, or whether it's been a success or not, is LaFleur has been in with this team now for however many years. He's been to the NFC Championship game twice. They still, for me, haven't got that big statement victory against a true contender when it absolutely had to happen. So I'm not going to say they're Super Bowl or bust team, but maybe they're a team that need to punch someone in the mouth, someone that's more of a contender than them. But that's again, it's a conversation for down the line, and hopefully we'll be having it. But no, I do think the Packers come away with it this weekend.
No, last week Spencer Rattler definitely rattled the Commanders. There was a 2-point conversion away from winning that game. They ended up losing by 20 points to 19, even though they scored nothing in the first half. Is there a possibility of them managing to put the scares up the Cheeseheads this week?
No. This game isn't even a contest for me. Excuse me. If this Saints team was fully fit, I still wouldn't give them a chance against this Packers team. For everything Kieran said there, look, Josh Jacobs has been phenomenal at running back this year. I know there were some questions about, why are they letting Aaron Jones go? Well, this is why. They have a younger player coming in with less injury issues who has just really slotted in and been fantastic. Jordan Love has got better as the season's gone on. Those interceptions that were being thrown seem to have been cut out the last few weeks. And, you look at the targets that he has out there in terms of some young, exciting talent with, Kraft at tight end and Watson and Reid and Dubs. This is just a team that is built to score points. And against this Saints team, which I think Darren Rizzi has done an all right job coming in as the interim head coach. He got a little bit of a boost for a while. They got a couple of wins. But I think you lose, and I'm not a big fan of Derek Carr, but when you lose Derek Carr and you're bringing in Rattler, I think Kamara may be doubtful for this weekend. I don't know if he's going to go. He's obviously another big name on offense who you would be looking to get some sort of points to trouble the Packers. And, with those guys, potentially Kamara not there, even if he is, it's just not a contest. This Packers team is too good. And I fancied them to win, and I don't think the 14 points is too high. I think it's something they could cover.
Yeah, I'm going for the Packers in this one as well. I've been waiting to use the joke, I'll put my house on New Orleans, but they've just been so bad this year. Haven't even come close to being able to bring that one out. Brian, final word to you.
You can keep that for the trip in February to New Orleans. The Saints have given up 2,038 yards on the ground this season. It's an average of just over 100 yards per game. This is playing right into Josh Jacobs' hands for Monday Night Football. Yeah, the Packers' comprehensive victory.
All right, that's it for our preview of Week 16. Make sure you keep an eye out for our Instant Reaction podcast, which will be available in the early hours of Monday morning, and we will reconvene on Monday evening to give our reaction to all of the everything we have seen over the course of Week 16, all 16 games of it. For now, for everyone here at the Irish NFL Show, thank you very much for listening.